Okay, thank you for joining us today again. Thank you for participating. Today, in our series seminar organized by the TOBB ETU Department of Political Science and International Relations, we are going to host Professor Hamashita Takeshi, Professor Hamashita from Japan. Professor Hamashita is a distinguished historian of Asian economic history. He has many books. Let me introduce him a little bit. Professor Hamashita is from Tokyo, is from Shizuoka actually, but he studied in Tokyo, and he taught in Hitotsubashi University, in Tokyo University, in Kyoto University, in Ryukoku University. He's been associated with the Institute of Oriental Culture, and he has been the director there in the past. Today, he's actually in Yat-sen University in Guangzhou, China. He's also affiliated with the Toyo Bunko Center, the Oriental Library. He has many studies, and he has a very serious work. According to American Academy of Arts and Sciences, says that because his work brought to light the existence and importance of mercantile and other networks that ran from present-day Singapore to Hokkaido in early modern times, he changed our notions of what was and was not new about the arrival of Europeans in East and Southeast Asia, and thus about what modernity means in the context of East Asian history. He has many works, as I have said. I will just recite a few of them here. His major works are on China's Central World Order, Hong Kong and Singapore as network cities, the tributary trade system in modern Asia, and overseas Chinese financial networks, and China, East Asia, and global economy. He also edited many books. I have one of them with me, actually. It's with late Giovanni Arrighi and also Mark Selden about the resurgence of East Asia. Today, his book, he's going to talk more about his 2008 book, based on 2008 book, China, East Asia, and the Global Economy. So before, I'd rather quickly pass the floor to Professor Hamashita. Thank you for being with us today, Professor.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, please, you can start your talk. And
yes, thank you very much today, Professor Bahadur, inviting me for your lecture class. And I'm very happy to introduce some of my idea on Asia and global economy. And as Professor Bahadur just introduced today's topic, title of my presentation. And it's mostly economic history based book published in 2008. But also today I try to venture more from my recent work on international relation related issues. So this is my rather new current interest. And also I would like to learn from your side. I raise some similar question or some relevant questions in my talk. So if you raised your side, some idea from your side, I'm very happy to communicate. And also, just as Professor Bahadur introduced Toyo Bunko Oriental Library. Oriental Library is one of the very intensive collection on Asia, not only Asian book and materials, but also European studies on Asia collected in our library, and many people from Turkey accessed every year to Oriental Library homepage and searching digitized material. So I hope you also join the Oriental Library database collection in the future. And shall I share my presentation, or just I spoke too long, or yes,
It's up
Professor
to you.
Badr?
Up to you.
Yeah.
It's up to you.
Okay, so I will share my presentation. My title is China, East Asia, and the Global Economy, and subtitle is From Local, Regional, and Global Perspective. So not much on national perspective or nation-state perspective, which international relations emphasize the objectives. So I try to discuss more on regional issues and globalization. Firstly, I briefly introduce chapters of the book and referring to some keywords, key terms for my presentation afterwards. So the number is the chapters of my book. So chapter 1 is Tribute Trade System and Modern Asia. This also includes many historical debate on Asia and modernization and tributary relation of Chinese Empire history. Chapter 2 is Tribute and Emigration, Tribute and Migration. So the movement of people under tributary system, it is also one of very important issue. And chapter 3 is Silver in Regional Economies and the World Economy, which means silver is not Asia-based product, but more from Europe and from American continent, particularly under Spanish period. So Spanish dollar, then Mexican dollar is the very typical way of silver coin flew into Asia. So of course, not only Asia, but also Europe, and some price revolution occurred because of inflation of the currency and so on. And I argue silver is one of the very global commodity or global issue which influenced Asian economy or characterized Asian economy, which is very important in China and also India with silver-based economy for a long time. Then chapter 4 is Ryukyu Maritime Network. Ryukyu is small island south of Kyushu, Japan, and also in between Kyushu Island and Taiwan Island. And then also close to Fujian province of continental mainland China. So this Ryukyu now is under Japan, but for about 5 centuries, 500 years, it is an independent kingdom which tributed to China and also sent mission to Japan. So Ryukyu Island or Ryukyu King manipulated very complicated way in between Japan and China for many centuries. And chapter 5 is Maritime Asia. So I try to talk Asia from maritime aspect, not from continent, land-based aspect. So by emphasizing the Maritime Asia, organized treaty port networks. So it's not based on nation state, but based on maritime port, treaty port network to describe the change of region or so-called modernization of East Asia. Chapter 6 is foreign trade finance. This is finance because silver issue is very important both in China and India or in general Asia. So I traced financial aspect of silver under the trade of opium in the early period of 19th century. Chapter 7 is Hong Kong and Singapore under British Empire. From overseas Chinese remittance, sending money home from abroad. So Hong Kong Shanghai Bank, for example, played a very important role to intermediate this remittance from Southeast Asia overseas Chinese to their hometown in southern China. So British Empire utilized this kind of overseas Chinese remittance finance to establish the financial market in between China and Southeast Asia. Chapter 8 is overseas Chinese financial network in East Asia, Korea, China, Japan. Usually it is less studied. Chinese merchant or Chinese bankers went out for business. But there are many historical sources to trace this overseas Chinese financial network in Korea, Japan, and Shanghai. So I traced this Korea in Seoul, Incheon, and Japan in Kobe. Japan for Kobe, they set up branches and established financial network to accommodate rice trade and other financial business. So these 8 chapters, I rather focused network and interrelation, but not much international relation, more inter-regional relation and interlocal relation. which means inter-open ports relation. And then I am now entering inter-climate zone relations, because nowadays the warming of the earth is becoming very concerned issue. And climate issue is, in the history of studies, classified as natural science area, not social science, not humanities. But how to put this climatic issue into social science and natural science study area is now very urgent issue. Thinking about corona pandemic now we are facing is also revealed human society is a part of nature or part of natural world. So we can't just separate. This is social science. This is natural science. Not that type of separation. But we need more unified or interact, combined way of discussion. Then globalization is one very important issue and agenda for us to think about. And there are several questions and answers, not just one answer. Globalization has been discussed mostly, I think. It's an expansion of human society, expansion of the world. Didn't include nature and natural world. So under globalization agenda, cross-region or layers of region are more being paid attention to investigate. Also, East-West relation, this very traditional formula to discuss many issues. But now we also can touch upon vertical relation of the earth, including such as carbon dioxide emissions and so on, which is very urgent issue for the world. And then human society part we usually talk about. And this is under world, idea of world. That is our traditional or our usual thinking. But human society with natural world or world of nature, this kind of combination is nowadays more important because it's very clear thinking about pandemic issue we are facing. We realized human society is a part of natural world, part of nature, or human society is also under natural world to go together. So our question is, what is the difference between global and world. And then what is Asia? And what is regional system for us to think about history, contemporary days, and in the future? And how about interlocal relations? So these global regional system, interlocal relation, not only in Asia, in the world, we can open our research and discussion under the idea of globalization. So I will explain one by one now, and I rather emphasize globalization is not just extension of the human society, human world, but globalization we should include, or we should emphasize more the nature, natural environment to think about the world of human society. So globalization might be by one dimension is expansion of human society, activity of human society. But at the same time, we should think globalization is an influence from nature to human world, human society. It's different dimension. And then what is Asia? Asia, term Asia is very, very old and not Asia-born Asia. Of course, we can explain Asia in many ways, but I will also explain Asia historically started from the area of your country, Turkey, part of Turkey. In the ancient Greece, ancient Roman Empire, the Asia is one domain under Roman Empire. And to me, thinking about current Asia, we need to pay more attention on Maritime Asia, to think about Asia more globally. Then regional system, I explain the China-centered tributary system. So region has a sort of system before nation state, or even in the period of nation state. So regional perspective is also very important to understand the world and the function of the world. And also interlocal relation. I explain Ryukyu trade network and also open port network and open port urban city network. So from this point of view, in this world or in the future, instead of following just nation state or international relation, but more we can follow inter-urban city, interlocal relation as a sort of replacing formation of interstate relation. And I briefly explain the difference between world and global and the globalization. Globalization to me is a sort of motives of regional dynamism. And left and right, I separate. The left side is our idea of regional order and the world. This is very static, without any change. The biggest and widest is world, and then underworld, greater regions such as Asia, Europe, American continent, and so on, Africa. And then most probably under great region, nation state locate. And under nation state, there's a region, and then urban city, and then local. This order from up to bottom doesn't change. Local doesn't or can't comes up to nation state. Local should be under nation state. Whereas right-hand side, I think globalization changed this kind of traditional order of regions or spaces based on nation state. Looking at right-hand side, I put maritime region. This is very new because of globalization, including nature or natural environment, we should take maritime region into consideration very seriously, because the surface of the earth, 71% is a sort of water, sea. So land portion or continent portion only around 30%. So we put our perspective on globalization. The maritime issue comes out very, very sharply. And also local issue doesn't stay under nation state. Or on the left-hand side, the individual regional space locate under settled order, whereas on the right-hand side, each space or each category interrelated each other without any center. So local, for example, or urban city, for example, can directly connect to the world individually. Maybe by using some transportation system or a sort of internet system and so on. But local has its own basis to insist their sort of position. So globalization is a sort of pushing world regional dynamism. So this is a basic idea of globalization to me, based on human society. So far, not much included by nature, natural environment, except maritime region. And then I come back, you are very familiar of this map. This is Roman Empire. And then we can find the term of Asia. You can see this here is Asia. And this Asia is, and this is Rome. And under ancient Greek system, ancient Greek, this area is called as Small Asia or Smaller Asia. And then under Roman Empire, Asia is one of a sort of domain or one of the place to tribute to Rome. It's not direct control under Rome itself. Under Roman Empire, it's a sort of tributary countries like East Asia, as in China, in for many centuries. So the term Asia came from here. That's also interesting and important to think about the current Asia. Of course, including this area, all the way to Far East until Japan is classified as Asia. So from the Greece and Roman Empire and then European perspective, including Portuguese, Spanish perspective, then Dutch and British, idea of Asia extended to the east. But then Asian side utilize the term of New Asia to criticize traditional empire, traditional kingdom in that part. So Asia has this kind of historical term worth investigating. So sometimes Asia is a sort of nation state like the purpose for modernization. But sometimes Asia is very wider Asia or greater Asia to pursue a sort of empire. So this is very worth investigating from international relations aspect to follow the changing Asia, influenced many ways. And even Ottoman Empire, for example, followed this kind of tributary system in their periphery area and also used this kind of tributary relation and tributary trade network. So I just introduced the origin of Asia is in your side. And now East Asia, people also very eagerly using Asia and East Asia. Then East Asia as a region. There are many ways of saying, such as globalizing East Asia, focusing China. In 21st century, or even 1980s on, for 40 years, China developed and globalizing. So this term is described the changing Asia. And also layers of regions. Layer of regional Asia, which means upper region of East Asia is Asia. So East Asia is partially under regional Asia. And also Maritime Asia, I will come back later. And also port cities network of Asia and East Asia. From these approach for these decades, the Asian scholars or scholars who are working on Asian history or Asian international relations followed this issue and agenda. So discussion of East Asia became more globalizing and also layers, not just one space, and also maritime focused, like Asia Pacific and so on. And then port cities network. This is a sort of diagram to show the tributary relation and maritime Asia, maritime trade. Here is a center. Historically, it is called some Chinese empire, the history of Chinese empire. But Chinese empire was not a sort of territorial nation state, a sort of concentric circle from the center toward outside. So this center actually locates, emperor locates at the center, and then local provincial areas, and then many minorities, and then going out, Northeast Asia, and also Mongolia and Tibet, and then outside of domain influenced Korea, Japan, Ryukyu, and Southeast Asia, such as Siam, Vietnam, Laos, Burma, Philippines. And talking about Japan, until 14th century or early 15th century, Japan is a sort of tributary country to China. But after that, Japan became a sort of mutually trading country with China. Whereas Korea and Ryukyu has been most important tributary countries until 19th century. And also Japan traded with China through Buddhism relations or through trade relations. Japan never said tributary country, though China side recognized Japan as tributary countries. So this kind of double recognition or different recognition of self and opposite is very interesting and huge tributary system in East Asia. And then we can find Arabic and Islamic regions, and then India and Europe and Russia are either tributary country or mutually trading country. So from China side, they are all tributary countries under some tributary trade or tributary manners. But from outside, they are not always recognized they are tributary country. So this is a sort of geo-cultural structure of tributary relation with benevolent idea as a center in the emperor, not territorially bounded relation. This is a sort of tributary ship. This is a model in Thailand, Bangkok. Thailand is a huge rice trade tributary countries, and they tributed many times to southern China by shipping rice. And this is a sort of Buddhism tower on the cement ship, and with eyes on the side of ship. This means particular local ship in southern China. And now this is a sort of in the garden of Yanawa Temple of Bangkok. And this is a Maritime Asia and Maritime Network model. And it is not familiar for you to recognize this map, but here is Japan. Here is Japan. And all this continent is China. And this peninsula is Korea. Here is Taiwan, and here is Ryukyu. Ryukyu is so small, but the important network center of trade. And then Philippines, and then Malaysia, Vietnam, Indonesia. All these are tributary countries. And not only this part, but also entering into Australia continent, New Guinea, until Tasman Gulf. So in between continent and islands, a sort of chain of seas. This is South China Sea, East China Sea, and within South China Sea, there's another sea, some Arafura Sea, and then Coral Sea, until Tasman Sea. This kind of in-between continent and islands, there is a chain of seas which can interact each other for many centuries. So we can say Asia is a maritime Asia. And a little bit detailed Asia. This is China Sea, this is South China Sea, this is Bengal Bay. And we have Singapore here, and we have Hong Kong here, in between seas. And this sees, for example, Singapore are from Malacca. Malacca has a long history of trading port, and Singapore, after early 19th century, British set up and absorbed the historical resources of Malacca. And Hong Kong is same as from Canton trade between China and Europe. And also we can see some tributary trading port, but I just explain Hong Kong and Singapore is two marine born from maritime trade and set up port cities, not from extension of inland to the sea. So we think about the open port or coastal port are set up by intersection of maritime seas, not from inside, but from the sea created this kind of very important seaport. And the case of Ryukyu trading network, Ryukyu is here in between Kyushu of Japan, and then here is Taiwan, and this is Philippines. And Ryukyu tributed to China, but before going up to Beijing, entered Fuzhou, and this port is most important for Ryukyu king to trade, to get funding from trade. And tribute itself is rather ceremonial. So Ryukyu organized this kind of very wide spread tributary trade network because Ryukyu doesn't produce any meaningful tributary commodity. China requires some special commodity from Southeast Asia, such as pepper, sappanwood, and other stuff for Chinese medicine. So Ryukyu traded to Southeast Asia to get sappanwood, pepper as a tributary commodity to China. So Ryukyu is completely intermediate trade in between China and other area of East Asia and Southeast Asia. So this Ryukyu network is also very interesting. And then my question is, Black Sea also has local, not much trading relation among coastal port cities, but it is a sort of possible formation in between Black Sea and coastal ports, such as union of Baltic cities in northwestern Europe. And these red cities is surrounding Baltic Sea. And as countries, more than 11 countries, but these port city joined Union of Baltic Cities as an independent condition. More than 100 cities joined and discussed each other, including environmental issues and so on. So this port city network will make sense to think about some substitute or supplement or new mode of international relation to connect more local and the globalizing world. Then I try to explain a little bit of the nature or natural environment issues as a global issue. So I said globalization is on one side an extension of human society or expansion of human society. But on the other, we should pay attention more on natural side or natural environmental side to think about globalization. So because of globalization, we seriously recognize natural environment, particularly looking at the pandemic. We can't ignore the natural side or natural environment side to think about human society. So put some meteorological circulation. It's a climatic circulation, climatic environment circulation as a global circulation. Then second is economic and environmental condition circulated. So in the past, we worked this number two area, economic and also political science worked in this area. And climatic circulation is natural science area, not our side, our international side, or not our historical side. But we found it very closely related each other, and even global issue determine human society. So I put rather large circle as a global circulation. It's a climatic circulation and so on. And then economic circulation here. And then social life and medical issue, which is aging society is facing, is now becoming very serious. So these three circulation, big and small, relation, whatever, put together, and we think about these three circulation on the same level without separating each other. So academically speaking, there is no subject. And we know many, some interdiscipline studies, but so far interdiscipline studies is scholars based on their own discipline comes up and talk together but without entering other side. So it's just plural of two disciplines. So far, interdisciplinary studies is just a sort of amalgamation one by one of separated subject. So a sort of structure of academia or a structure of wisdom might be changed, might be reorganized under this globalization period very seriously. Otherwise, we can't cope with the big change of the earth or climatic change, environmental change, until change of social life. This is a sort of climate zones. And in the history, usually we talk about East and West. And for example, social science, some influence from West, the discipline entered into outside of Europe. But in the history, I think another sort of movement is climatic movement. And thinking about this green area is very rich agriculture area, product of agriculture area, which we shouldn't miss by industrialization. And northern part of temperate climate or southern part of cool climate, which means European countries in the history, entered into temperate climate and tropical climate to get natural resources such as rubber and tin and labor for industrialization. So industrialization is not East-West relation, but more climatic change between temperate climate area and southern cooler climate area. So now under globalization and globalized world, we think back, what is a rational proportion, rational arrangement of the climatic zones, climatic regions, climatic relations. And we need to think about how about so-called period of industrialization period, which cooler climate people entered temperate tropical area to get resources for industrialization. But now globalization observed many serious climatic change. So we need to pay attention more. This interrelation between climate zones. And also another thing, issue 2030s in Asia particularly in East Asia. Population change, structural population change in Asia region. And now, or already past 2010s, Japan, Korea, Singapore, Taiwan already entered aging societies. Sorry, this is not correct. Societies. Oh, this is conclusion. And this 2030 issues is China will change her structure of population. China started to enter aging societies or working power, working population changed. And then 2060s, Turkey and Middle East area and Central Asia area and Southeast Asia, South Asia coming to the central place of providing working power. So this kind of generation change or structure of generation change, human society never faced in the past several centuries. So what do we think now, looking at the current world? Within several decades' time, new change and big change might come. So how to synthesize these factors and how to think about international relation discipline includes these factors for our discussion is very urgent issue for us. And conclusion, periphery frontier studies in regional connections. So idea of periphery or idea of frontier under regional relation. Is it very territorial boundary or other sort of boundary under regional system is necessary. So periphery frontier studies issue is one agenda for us to get in more seriously. So as a discipline of regional system, historically tributary system, how do it function in the history and changed in the history. And we also need to put maritime issues more seriously into our consideration of regional system. So regional system is not on the land, but also including maritime region. Number two, intra-Asian connections, intra-Asian relations. So we know from economic history's point of view, commodity chain, not just one commodity traded widely under network, but according to different open port, different place, one commodity replaced by another commodity, and so on. This kind of chain of commodity should be investigated more, particularly under maritime zone. It is very wide variety. There are many different commodities connecting one by one or together. Number 3, dynamism of local region in global history studies. So we pay attention more on local issues, local region, to think about current world, because local region in the past is just under nation state without any sufficient information or movement of people or commodities and societies. But now local region are becoming one of the central unit to organize globalization. So the discussion between world history and global history should be continued more for many aspects. And then Maritime Asia and influence by climate is now we need to think seriously. So by using economic issues, we can also discuss international relation theory from regional aspect. And today I try to explain one version, and particularly a sort of regional system in Middle East and port city network in Turkey, for example. We can discuss more, investigate more jointly for the further sort of discussion of global economy or global issues we are now facing. Yes, I will stop here, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor. We could keep the screen on if you wish, if you're going to use the presentations, or you can close it down if you wish. Let me make a comment before moving to question and answers. First of all, this way of looking at international relations, or international is not the right way actually, global politics, is kind of, the Turkish actually participants are probably not used to that. The way we teach international relations in our departments to our students is quite state-centric. And also, if you look at the popular discussions in media, you see that relations between nation states is the focus. As a matter of fact, 19th century notions of geopolitics dominate the discussions, and doesn't really capture the realities of the 21st century or history, as you have put it. These kind of ideas came into the department, the discipline of international relations through historical sociology, but it was focusing on European history. So the idea is that the modern nation states, I mean, in the discipline of international relations, after the Westphalian peace, the relations between nation states, the sovereign entities, became dominant and spread around the world. But if you look before that to Europe, you see lots of different polities, small kingdoms, small groups, the religious, the Pope, everything, having a relation with each other. It was actually a network of relations rather than the horizontal relations, which is actually proposed by the Westphalian system. Now, your work pretty much showed that this has been the case in Asia as well. The Asian system was perceived more like a hierarchical relationship with China at the center. But if you look at it, you see that there are many relations between different polities. It's a network of relations as well. And interestingly, it's not only polities, actually, companies are a part of the global system in East Asia as well. And you talked about the relations between local groups, localities, and the climate zones, relations between climate zones, and you can add the ethnic groups or religious groups transcending borders, having interactions and relations as well. So looking from a sociological, from an economic perspective, looking at the interactions from a historical and economic perspective, gives a picture of relations between different polities, a network of relations. Now the idea is that here, the idea actually in international relations, there has always been a network of international relations studies actually lately, but I feel that they are still very nation state focused. But anyway, okay, let me ask the first question actually, and maybe we can make the discussions, and let's keep on recording. And the idea here is that in the 21st century, this era of modernity, the relations between sovereign entities is actually again turning into network relations, relations between polities. So, but the latest COVID-19 pandemic have demonstrated that countries are closing down in sovereign entities, and the rise of populism was there before the pandemic. So are we going a bit too fast in declaring a network of relations around the world? Is the sovereign state still very dominant? So this is a question that I would like to ask.
I think sovereign state, so far no other way. Of course, nominally, there are many sort of internationally mutually shared or mutually related organization on some health and medical science and so on. But whenever this type of pandemic occurred, suddenly the movement of people will be shut down. So so-called sovereign state will, or seemingly will come back at the center of the function. But we need to pay, or we need to separately discuss a sort of sovereign state as a model, and also the function of the world. How this type of sovereign-based state, provide more of mutual agenda or shared agenda. So we need to think about from both ways under this pandemic. We can't just decide sovereign state are almighty for current state. We still doubt, or we still raise questions. Is it enough? Or under globalization situation, what is alternative, or what is the different thing we should pursue to have better situation? So my argument is not just separate dichotomical separation, but based on sovereign state. It's one function of sovereign state to face this kind of agenda, but we still need to foresee or find another factor under this situation.
I see. So even the sovereign state is the legal basis of international systems, still relations with polities can continue after the pandemic.
Yeah, but how about local network? If we think about some real function of local network in the future, maybe that make more sense to develop our social life.
Yes, thank you. Let me ask, are there any questions? Okay, let me make a comment. Actually, I had a chat with a professor in Ankara from Middle East Technical University, Nuri Yurdusev. He actually studies also diplomatic history and these kind of things. The question was actually, well, the argument he had, well, the question I asked is that since the international relations, I cannot avoid the word international, you see, I got used to using it. The global relations, okay, the global studies, has moving beyond nation states. And companies, associations, religious groups, climate zones, all of them are in part of it. The things we teach in these departments, international relations, the theories, okay, the concepts and everything, are they still relevant, was the question that I have asked actually. So his perspective, I don't know if you would agree with this or not, but his answer was that international relations is actually about the relations between polities. That is to say, between local groups, maybe religious groups, political units, okay? And not necessarily sovereign nation states. So although theories are actually still relevant, but you have to go beyond the nation state and you have to look all these local polities or transborder polities. And then, yes, you can still use the frameworks and the concepts that have been developed in this discipline to understand international politics. I don't know if you would agree with that.
That sort of concept and also definition without forming whole a sort of intellectual system, it's very difficult to change. So far we had some device to a little bit to surpass the inconvenient usage of current situation. For example, we are not used to combine environmental issues and political relation directly, but maybe from now on, like Paris Treaty of environmental issues, how social science or natural science and political science cope with this kind of necessity or reality of necessity. We need to recognize, or we need to examine the gap between. Of course, we just go on by using our familiar or traditional usage, but I think the concept itself become blurred or are changing according to the situation. So certain time and certain period, we can change a sort of structure of our knowledge and concept alternatively, that is, we can't say exact time and stage, but our purpose should on that direction.
I see. Thank you very much. I mean, as you have said, even climates or demographics come to it. In other words, it's not only that we break the unit of analysis as the nation states and add all these different social and ethnic groups, but we also have a network of disciplines here. It's not only about political science, or you have to connect political science with the climate science. And the last, the PPT that you have shared with us, the demography, the aging society, the aging. I'm asking all the questions, but let me ask this question. How do you think it's going to influence the global system, the global politics? I mean, the aging of these Asian societies and almost all the societies around the world. But what I'm trying to ask is that my guess is that all the resistance against immigration after a few decades will be gone, because these societies will have to bring all these different groups into their countries so that they could carry on their economy and take care of the elderly. So how do you think this will influence all this the structure of the global relations?
Right. It's since we don't have any detailed experience except some particular area historically already how to say closely related area, a sort of cross-border area, might be some experience they accumulated already, but basically it is very much separated. But substantially, this migration has been very important factor, but ideologically or for nation state sovereign purpose, it is not so widely accepted or widely or overtly explained. But we look at a sort of reality of the situation. We might find a different aspect, like the current rather serious issue of the separation of the rich and poor. This is to what extent we sometimes we just don't know. So maybe some information system of the world might change. But of course, by imposing this agenda into history and then we reinterpret historical context, for example, climate issue influence to history, we didn't trace on the history between socioeconomic and climate issues. But if we put this climate information into history and then change the historical context, maybe we will find another phenomena on the current world. Actually, global history studies shows this kind of zigzag procedure between history and contemporary issues.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor. I think there is one question from the audience, but are we going to be able to? Yes, thank you very much. This is Tralay Kench. He asks, Professor Hamashita, many thanks for the comprehensive and illuminating presentation. Given the China's economic power and history, do you think that China will play a leading role in shaping the international monetary and finance system? This is the question.
I can say to a certain extent, under current statistical system of the economic development and a sort of production and so on, as a number of statistics, China surpass the world is most probably we can assume that direction. But at the same time, there are several different discussions now undergoing, such as the production system compared to other economic system, whether or not it surpass to global market. It's maybe just part of global market. So that type of argument is not completely agree the statistical increase of Chinese economy, but recognizing, admitting the Chinese superpower, but as an economic system from a sort of production side or local society, maybe we need to pay attention more carefully and also follow the procedure between the economic system and economic development.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor, and I thank you for Turalay Genç for his question. We ran out of time. Thank you very much for this very detailed and illuminating presentation. The ideas here are not very accustomed to. The Turkish audience are not very accustomed to the way that you present, to look into history and to international relations. Thank you very much for
thank you very much.
Our horizons. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, bye bye.
Thank you. Please take good care of yourself and
yes.